I want to wrap up the show today by telling one other quick story. We'll talk about, and it's kind of funny, as I've been saying the last several weeks, all we can really talk about, it seems like, is the coronavirus. But I do want to tell you a quick story about homeschooling, and just an interesting thing's happening right now. Because the public schools are closed, so everybody's homeschooling now, and the school districts around the country are providing, a wide range of assistance. Some basically nothing, and some are giving kids some online sources, and some people are stepping up, and some people who do homeschool are trying to share with other parents who are now dealing with homeschooling for the first time. So there's renewed attention in a lot of quarters, a lot of places, that we have children being educated in their homes and educated by parents who, as part and parcel of teaching, American history and economics and government, are imparting their values. So it's a really interesting time. It turned out there was an article Harvard University put out, which can only be called a hit piece, and it was published by a woman named Elizabeth Bartholet in the Harvard Magazine. And she just basically came out and said, we have to fight homeschooling in this country. We have to. She didn't say outlaw it, but she really went on very much the offense, saying homeschooling is very dangerous for children. Homeschooling allows children to be trained by just their own parents, and these kids may end up not having, in her view, a healthy respect for the diversity of views, diversity of ideas. These kids will be closed-minded. They will not be as able to integrate into society and to find their way in society. This whole idea that children who are homeschooled are deprived was her theme, and I got to wondering if, I don't know when she wrote this article, maybe she wrote it way ahead of time, but I got to wondering if it got, either that she wrote it or it got so much attention, because there are actually now more parents for the first time in a long time in our country on day-to-day basis having interaction with their kids and finding out what the kids are learning in school, finding out what they've been talking about. I can imagine parents saying, they told you what about George Washington? They said, what about our founding? You could imagine parents for the first time engaged in homeschooling, realizing, wow, I didn't know the schools were teaching my kids this stuff. But back to her article, she's basically saying that kids coming from homeschooling are going to end up with, unable to function in life and unaware of the diversity of views and not having all the social values of modern society, blah, blah, blah. So it's really a very, very harsh slapdown. But the great thing was, and why I want to mention it, and I'm closing out the show, this topic today, but I want to mention that, growing up, and in my life growing up, I didn't know anyone who homeschooled. We did not. I went to public school and then, private school for college and law school. But I didn't ever know homeschoolers, and I did not have any perception of, what it involves to really homeschool your kids. It wasn't until we moved to the state of Texas in the year 2000. My husband and I came here in 2000, and our kids were still, they also, I never homeschooled. I never even thought about it, but I appreciate they got a good quality education at the school they went to around here. But I'm beginning to realize in this battle to take back our country from leftism, in this battle to help instill in the next generation of children, what America was founded on, what America means to the world, what the ideas of our founding, the depth and importance of those ideas, and the brilliance of the people who were at the time the noted philosophers that our founders had actually read and contemplated their ideas and decided what they thought of. And so our founders had taken those ideas, these, over the millennia ideas by deep thinkers, and they had a chance to create a country based on the ideas they learned and based on what they thought would be really important in order to have a country like America be created, be successful, be sustainable, to use a modern word, and have the highest commitment to the individual right to freedom that was possible, consistent with having an ordered liberty and ordered society. So I think that those ideas are instilled in by homeschoolers in homeschooled children far more than they are ever instilled in the public schools and even in the colleges. I mean, here's this woman at Harvard complaining about the lack of diversity and viewpoint when college campuses, Harvard included, and other Ivy League schools and just other colleges are at this era in our history filled with socialists, filled with people who are the economics professors, the government professors, the history professors, who are very, very supportive of communist-style government, socialist government, very driven to inspire young people to hate the idea of America, to hate the idea of individual liberty, to hate the idea of a society rooted in faith in God and a society rooted in Judeo-Christian values. Colleges and high schools and even lower than that around this country have been really infiltrated by the American left. Happened over decades. We didn't realize it was happening. It just kind of, we have now more conservatives alert to that than we had in a long time. But the schools have become overwhelmed with leftist thinking, which by leftist thinking, I mean disdain for the idea of freedom, of free markets, of capitalism, of the idea of a country rooted in religious faith, of the idea of the importance and the beauty of the First Amendment, all of the freedoms guaranteed. All these ideas are antithetical to the leftist mindset. The leftist mindset is collectivist. It is it's oriented around government control of society. It likes and seeks more control over society. So I'm getting around to saying, I think that this Harvard article and other disdain for homeschoolers comes in large part from their perception that, we're trying to instill, these educators are trying to instill left-wing values, collectivist, socialist, communist ideas in America's youth from kindergarten through grad school. And we have these homeschoolers who are getting in the way. These homeschoolers are instilling these values we're trying to beat out of the kids. We're trying to ignore. Homeschoolers play a vital role in this country. Even though I didn't homeschool my own kids, I wasn't homeschooled. And most of my friends, I only know a few people who did homeschool their kids. But as I've talked with them more and more, I've realized that the homeschool movement has come a long way from formerly having been just largely driven by, religious faith, people who wanted to have a faith-based education in their home, wanted to instill their faith, mainly Christian values in their children. But homeschooling is growing in this country because more parents are beginning to appreciate again, to newly appreciate the extraordinary greatness of America and the idea of a country rooted in liberty. And they recognize their children will never learn this at school, and that too many American kids are not learning this in school. So the homeschooling movement is growing as the left grows more as strangling control over the education system. Homeschooling is growing as a means to counter that, to instill in children, our own children, and as they grow up into young adults, love of freedom, love of America, love of the idea of America. That's really what is at the core of this Harvard professor complaining about homeschooling. She really created quite a stir. A lot of articles written in response, just saying all sorts of wonderful points. But I wanted to say I don't usually talk about homeschooling on my show very much, and it's not something I pursued in my life. But I can see its place in the kind of American political conversation to be a force that pushes back against the leftism that has invaded and really overtaken most college campuses, the high school curriculum, which your kids learn in high school and junior high school and elementary school. What they learn from the public education system is often very left wing. And so this woman is complaining about it. And I especially think it's interesting because right now, everybody's a homeschooler now. I mean, everyone's having to homeschool, and maybe it's an opportunity for more parents to decide, I think I kind of like this. I think I want to help shape my kids' views. They might be learning things that their kids tell them that they don't have, that they didn't even realize was being taught to them. And of all places, Harvard, one of the bastions of leftism in this country, academia, intolerant of conservative ideas, intolerant of religion, intolerant of the idea that religion plays a central role in creating values and creating our country. intolerant of the idea that freedom and free markets and capitalism are the best blessing for anyone on earth, intolerant of all those things. So Harvard, intolerant of the goodness of America, criticizing homeschoolers who are, many of them in large part, trying to instill in their children love of America. The articles, there are a bunch of articles up on our website, americacanwetalk.org. You can read some of the responses people had to this Harvard hit piece about homeschooling. I thought it was actually, it was a great topic to close out today. I talk about the coronavirus so very much in this show, and we have to talk about it. It's monumentally important, but the other things are going on too. And so the need to defend homeschooling, to newly appreciate for people who didn't do homeschooling, the value it contributes to our American culture and society. For the vast majority of homeschoolers who are conscientious, serious, substantive teachers, is a blessing. You're going to have a cadre of kids coming out of homeschooling who are going to be more committed to preserving America than a lot of their compatriots, their peers, coming to the public school system.